Hello everyone, welcome to the Android BoF, the AOSP BoF. My name is Amit Pundis. So the nature of AOSP BoF is it's like an informal session and we'll take the questions from the audience. We have prepared a set of uh, discussion items, and if we don't have enough questions from the audience, then we can stick to these, or anyone is free to take the questions and anyone is free to give the answers as well. It's just like an informal meeting between the friends. Right, so the first item on the agenda is recently AOSP main went into the read-only mode. So Linaro works on AOSP main branch for our testing and development. So for us, it is definitely a setback that, okay, now that we don't get access to the AOSP main, how do we get information about what is happening in AOSP? Earlier, we used to scrap through the git log commits from Cuttlefish for the device config related changes. We used to scrap through system core uh, commit logs. So how does it change things from a developer point of view, from an AOSP developer point of view?
So the big change is that on an AOSP projects, except for the kernel, there's no one accepting patches for any of the Android main projects. So there's no AOSP main being maintained. There's no auto merging between them, and so between AOSP main and internal main, and so all development for Android platform is happening on internal main, which is not visible publicly until points throughout the year after releases where it will get a push and then be basically read only. So that's what's happening. And so if what you were doing in the past was watching certain projects for changes to get hints at what are going to happen, you're not going to be able to do that. You'll have to wait for the 3-month, roughly 3-month apart pushes. So this affects anyone. We do have an early access program, and so for those of you who really have a need and are partnering with Google, it's possible you could get into the early access program, and then you would have access to main and all the development as it's occurring.
Thank you. So we were hoping someone to have some kind of discussion on virtio messaging, but we don't have audience for that. Right. Pirama had a session in the morning on autoFDO, so you covered a lot of things. We were hoping that if we get any questions on that, so we can address that here, but we can move on to the next set of topics, right? So I maintain a set of out-of-tree patches to boot Android on upstream kernel, right? No vendor hooks, no additional drivers, just a bare minimum set of patches. So one of that is AshMem, right? So earlier there was a plan to fade out AshMem and switch to memfd interface. What do you guys have any ET on that? That okay, by this release or by this time frame?
Yeah, so we have a Rust-based AshMem driver now, which does implement AshMem, but that's actually not the plan, and we're actually hoping that it never sees the light of day because if we can, we're going to replace it with a much thinner driver that is nothing more than a thin veneer over memfd, and that's what we hope is going to end up in Android 16. So so stay tuned. It might not be, I'm guessing that we're not going to get it in early enough for the Q2 release, but maybe the Q3 release.
Thank you. Any other questions you guys can think of now? 64-bit Android. So when are we moving to that? When only 64-bit Android? I mean, phase out the 32-bit Android support.
Well, so for user space, mobile is all 64-bit. You can't have 32-bit. The place that is holding out is TV because of needing to run with acceptable performance with 1.5 gig of memory, and so we're pushing on that ecosystem to where they're above that, where they're at 2 gig or more, go 64-bit, and we're working with them to get better performance even with 1.5 gig. So I'm hoping maybe we can get there. I don't think we'll get there 100% this year, but 32-bit really just remains for TV. It's not used anywhere else. The 32-bit kernel is now, the kernel team doesn't really, we build it and we do some kernel CI boot testing. We don't test it with Android because we have no Android to test it with anymore. So the cost of the TV community to maintain it is going up because they don't really get any testing apart from what they do. So there's a lot of incentive for them to move. So I'm hoping that by the next TV cycle, there won't be any 32-bit left.
Yanchin, you had a question?
Just thought of that. So before we have the GSI branch for each Android version, like Android 11 GSI, Android 12 GSI, Android 13 GSI, till Android 14 GSI. But there is no Android 15 GSI. I think that's for 1 year or since the last Android 15 released. So not sure if there is any plan change there or no. Yeah.
Okay, I know that we are building GSIs for Android 15. I don't know.
Or is it just that we don't have a 15 GSI branch for device level?
No. That's the platform manifest. I checked there. Or maybe it's not public.
So I know that partners get it because they have to do some of their compliance testing with GSI.
Yeah.
So it absolutely is being built, and I know that there have been cases where a test needed to be changed and it urgently was updated with some artifacts on the GSI, and they can pick it up. So I think it's really a question of maybe that we changed where you get it. So, but we definitely are still building it.
Okay, so yeah, let's check later.
Yeah. Do you have access to the partner Android
No.
partner Android documentation? I think that's where that. Okay, so search for GSI there, and I think there's instructions for how to get it. So they maybe have been updated.
Yeah. I just have another question about the autoFDO. So in the presentation, you mentioned that there are many optimization merged and there are many like performance improved for the build time for some boot time. Yeah. So all of them are in the AOSP right now, like the AOSP and main or the AOSP.
Yeah. So for user space, all the profiles are in AOSP for starting Android 15. For the kernel, profiles are in AOSP starting like early 2025. It's an opt-in configuration, so there's a kernel build config called config_AFDO, and if you set it to true, you can build with autoFDO.
Yeah. So if I in the presentation you said that there are some improvement like 50% improved. So I want to know if we can confirm that.
Yeah. Yes, you should. Yeah. So in ci.android.com for 6.6 and 6.12 kernels, there are side-by-side builds with and without autoFDO.
Oh.
So if you're able to flash, you should be able to confirm the improvements. And and reach out to me and my team if you have any issues, or even if you have positive news, just share it with us. It'll be great to know.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Arnel. So you want to talk about the virtio enhancements in Android? Just a brief.
So, what is the typical expectation for such?
So it's like an informal setup here. So we are just asking questions on general Android. So we have talked about the autoFDO thing. We have talked about AOSP main going into read-only mode. We have talked about the AshMem 64-bit Androids. When are they getting to that? So
Yeah, I can give a description of what we're planning to do. So for Android 16, we are not planning to release any virtio updates in the Linux kernel. The virtio message support we are pushing to Android 16 is in the trusty AVF VM. So it's trusty operating system, and it relies on a Rust crate. It's a Rust driver. For Android 17, we're going to want to have virtio message in the Linux kernel, and that's going to be an activity, a team effort with in sync with the OASIS spec adoption. So we don't know yet how it's going to pan out, right? We want to have a driver to possibly upstream once the spec is approved. And in the meantime, for development purpose, we're going to push virtio message driver as a JKI dynamic module using the DDK. So I'm creating actually an Android repository to make progress on the development of this new feature before it's upstream. So it's going to be part of the Android manifest. We'll be able to do kernel manifest, so we can build it. That's how we're going to introduce it at a pace that is independent from the upstreaming work.
So we should expect it in Android 17. Yes.
I hope so, yes.
Okay.
And the goal is to enable the main goal for Android 17 is to standardize host to TEE, and Trusty will be the first TEE to support the standardized IPC. But we are working with the other TEE vendor, and that's going to be allowing actually to have a transport standardized, which means HALs that used to be vendor specific can now become system, and only the TE implementation is in the vendor image, but the HAL can be part of the system image.
Oh, okay.
That's
okay.
one of the value prop
Right. Yeah.
from doing this. Then the next goal would be to enable a microdroid VM to TEE. So we have two reasons to push it to Android 16, host to TEE or microdroid to TEE. To 17. For Android 16, we only do trusty VM to TEE, and it doesn't require a Linux driver.
Okay. Thank you.
And also what we're going to try to make happen this year, probably not going to be upstream. It's a prototype of memory sharing in vsock. So to kind of mimic what the socket APIs do. In socket you can share a file descriptor across processes.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot do this with vsock. And here we want to support sharing file descriptor from the host to the VM, or from a VM to a TE again. And we're going to propose an extension to the vsock spec to be able to share file descriptors.
Okay, Thank you. Do we have any more questions on any follow-up questions? Did you find anything, Sarban? No? No.
But we'll be more prepared for next.
Yes, but a good idea. You gave a very good idea.
Yeah. Well, it was your idea.
It was your idea.
Well, we said that maybe we should. We said that for future sessions like this, we'll try to aggregate a list of questions from the open source community. There's a thing called AOSP Devs, which is mostly a Discord channel where people that work on Android outside of Google post questions they might have. And Amit and I are putting our names down to try to aggregate those questions and send them to you folks in advance so that you have a chance to take a look, and then we can decide what it's worth answering or not, but just do a bit more prep maybe for these sessions.
With that, I think we can wrap up the session early. Right? Yeah, thank you.